My fly today isn't a classic cutthroat trout fly at all. It was actually created in Denmark in the 1970s by a guy called Magnus Mortensen, and it's used particularly for sea trout along the Baltic Sea coast and in Scandinavian fjords and estuaries. It doesn't resemble any particular food item, but it does work very well in the winter in cold water. The original Magnus fly was all grey, but many variations were made, including this popular one with a pink hackle called the Polar Magnus. And this family of flies originally featured a tail made from a pair of sprayed grizzly hackle tips like this one, but nowadays they're most often tied with a tail of grizzly marabou, just like the one I've got in the vise. Now I was interested to see if I could catch sea-run cutthroat on this fly in the winter time here in Hood Canal, which is actually a fjord. And the first thing I noticed is that this fly looks really very lively in the water. It's got a good jigging action and the colour combination is just really highly visible. Now, I did catch a few smaller fish on it, although the conditions haven't really been good enough for me to do very much testing lately, so I'm going to keep on giving it a try. I really like the way this fly looks. For my hook, I'm going to go with an RX traditional shrimp hook, the NS156. These are made in Scandinavia, so I think that's appropriate for this pattern. Plus, they're just outstanding hooks. I'm using 140 denier thread in bright red. The red around the eyes is an important part of this pattern, and some tyers have used red nail varnish to coat that area around the eyes, but I'm just going with the red thread. I'm going to make a short thread base to begin with. Then I'll cut off the waist piece. And then return my thread to the point where I want to attach the eyes. The eyes are silver bead chain in a medium size. And when I've got them sitting where I want them, I'll secure them to the hook with figure-of-8 wraps. And then some helicopter wraps between the bottom of the eyes and the shank. I'll take my thread back out of the way and just add a little touch of super glue for added security. Now I'm going to continue my thread back towards a point opposite the point of the hook. My tail is a single grizzly marabou feather in a natural colour, and I want it to extend back about a hook length behind that bend. I'm going to tie it along the shank to give some volume to the body. But I'm going to be sure to leave enough room behind the eyes to let me tie in the hackles. Just tidy it up a bit. So now I've got that tied in, I'm going to take a length of 4-pound monofilament and loop that over my thread. And then tie both strands along the top of the hook. And before I reach the tail, I'm going to snip one of those strands off. Continue my thread wraps. And then just clip that remaining strand of monofilament out of the way. I'm going to add a little bit of extra wax to my tying thread before I go on to make a dub body. I've lost the label for this, but I think it's Light Bright in Polar Pearl, and it has some gold flash in it. But you could use Ice Dub or Sea-Lex or anything like that, just so long as it's not too dark and it's got some shine to it. Anything will work. And I'm not being shy with the dubbing, as this is going to be brushed out between the hackle fibres, and I do want it to have a buggy effect, so I'm putting plenty on. I'm not the best at making dubbing bodies, especially this material, which is, I find, a little bit tricky. I'm just going to trim away that mess at the tail where I caught the dubbing on the hook point. Get rid of that. Okay, that'll do. Now here I've got a grizzly saddle feather, and the longest fibres on it are probably 1.5 times as long as the hook gap. I'm going to tie that in by the butt. Bend it back, some more wraps, so that's not going to come out. Just trim away the excess. Now I'm going to palmer that down the body in about 6 wide turns. Now I'll take my monofilament rib and use it to trap the end of the feather. Now I'm winding the rib in the opposite direction to the hackle, and I'll continue to wind it tightly back, holding down the feather and the dubbing. I'll trap the mono with a couple of turns of my tying thread, and then I'm going to double it back on itself and add some more wraps to make sure it's not going to come out. And now I can remove that waste part of the feather. Next, I'll just tidy up a little bit there. I'm going to take a fluorescent pink saddle feather with about the same size fibers as I had with the grizzly hackle. I'm going to tie that in the same way. Fold back the stem, tie that down. Let's get rid of that. I'll stroke back the fibers, and I'm just going to take 3 turns. Probably you could use 2 if you wanted. Fold everything back. Make sure it's secure. Now I can remove the excess. I'll tidy it up a little bit more and take some extra wraps around the eyes. Now I'm going to build up the thread in front of the eyes. Then add a whip finish. Remove my thread. I'm going to use a little bit of UV resin over the head. I'll get rid of that little stray fibre there. Nuke it. Now I've got a popsicle stick with a bit of Velcro on it. And I'm going to use that to brush out the dubbing. Bring it up between the hackle fibers. And there we have it, the Polar Magnus. Good luck, and thanks for watching.